Hey everyone, just a quick introduction here for this one. This is a slightly different kind of lore warrior, it's more of a primer. This is the introduction video of the Innisphere. Brief history, let's say, between the very early 2500 kind of era going up to the very late 3060s, just after the Fedcom Civil War. It's from the book Battletech Innisphere at a Glance. And yeah, it's been something that's been requested multiple times before, and I've thought finally get around to doing it, so I hope you enjoy it. A brief history of the Innisphere. The history of human life among the stars, the creation of the great star empires, and the formation of the human society known as the clans begins with humanity's long ago first steps into space. Among the ancient nations of Terra, the dissolution of traditional alliances and enmities in the late 20th and early 21st centuries created an era of unprecedented peace and cooperation, in which all human societies turn their energy toward the advancement of the human race. By 2020, the groundbreaking research of two scientists, Thomas Kearney and Takayoshi Fukida, allowed General Motors to develop a self-sustaining fusion reactor. In 2027, the AS Columbia, powered by a GM fusion rocket, made its historic journey to Mars. And with that brief voyage, man's migration from Terra began. In 2102, the scientific community paid new attention to pan-dimensional gravitational mathematics, a breakthrough discovery made 80 years prior by Kearney and Fukida. Though 21st century scientists had scoffed at the theory, 22nd century physicists used Kearney and Fukida's work to develop the first faster-than-light ship in an intensive research effort known as the Deimos Project. Deimos produced the first Kearney-Fukida drive, which created a space warp around a starship through which the craft could jump distances of up to 30 light-years from its original point. On the 5th of December 2108, Terra launched the first so-called jump ship, the TAS Pathfinder, on its famous round trip between Terra and the Tau Ceti system. The ability to travel between star systems in the blink of an eye led to an unparalleled expansion of human colonies to other worlds. The first human colony of New Earth, established on Tau Ceti IV in 2116, paved the way for hundreds of others. Under the banner of the Terran Alliance, man spread throughout the galaxy as his ancestors had once swarmed over Terra. By the year 2235, an Alliance survey had counted more than 600 human colonies scattered across a sphere roughly 80 light-years in diameter. In an eerie parallel to earlier human history, however, this colonial expansion carried with it the seeds of its own destruction. Self-sufficient colonies far from their founding worlds began agitating for home rule. In 2236, a group of worlds at the edge of human-explored space declared independence from Terra. The colonial marines dispatched from Earth to quell the rebellion failed miserably. Within 6 years, the Alliance government had granted independence to all colonies that lay more than 30 light-years from Terra. Rise of the Hegemony. Over the next several decades, a combination of political infighting and severe economic strain of supporting Terran colonies ate away at the fabric of the Alliance. Tales of colonists starving to death sparked riots among sympathetic Terrans, and while the ranks of the poor, dispossessed and angry grew, in 2314, civilian riots and political polarization erupted into Alliance-wide civil war. The Alliance global militia, which had remained uneasily neutral throughout the long years of unrest, stepped in to stop the violence at the behest of James McKenna, an admiral in the Alliance global navy. Using his newfound authority as the Alliance's military saviour, McKenna tore down the corrupt Alliance government and established the Terran hegemony in its place. In 2316, a grateful public elected him the hegemony's first Director General. During McKenna's 23-year term in office, he launched 3 military campaigns to bring independent worlds back under their control. The first 2 campaigns, though hard-fought, were largely successful. The third, launched in 2335, was not. The aging McKenna left control of the final campaign to his son Conrad, whose persistent refusal to follow standard procedure eventually ended in disaster for the Hegemony Navy. In 2338, Conrad led his naval convoys blindly into the heavily mined Surma system, losing all but 2 of his 29 dropships. This failure gave heart to the worlds opposing the Hegemony, who had begun to ally with one another in order to protect themselves from the expanding Hegemony influence. Conrad's disgrace left the Hegemony without an heir to fill McKenna's place. Upon James McKenna's death in 2339, the Hegemony's High Council passed the leadership of the Hegemony to James McKenna's third cousin, Michael Cameron. The new Director General immediately began efforts to cement good relations with the Allied colony worlds that had by this time formed independent nations. In 2351, Michael Cameron took an action whose cultural repercussions would echo for centuries. He created the Peer List, establishing the equivalent of a feudal nobility whose members owed their exalted rank to their achievements. Among the first to receive a title was Dr. Gregory Atlas, lauded for his work on refining myoma bundles. These incredibly powerful synthetic muscles were an integral part of early work mechs. When powered by a fusion reactor, myoma bundles give a battle mech its strength and mobility. Though Dr. Atlas wouldn't live to see the first battle mech, used in action on the 5th of February 2439, his work ultimately changed the face of war. Inevitably, Cameron's peer list led to the creation of feudal ruling families in the various independent states surrounding the Hegemony. In the latter half of the 24th and early 25th centuries, tensions between these fiefdoms escalated into open war. Humanity's interstellar nations fought battle after battle against each other, each more savage than the last, culminating in the unspeakable massacre of civilians on the world of Tintervel in the Capellan Confederation. The Confederation's leader, Chancellor Elisha Lau, responded to the tragedy by devising the Ares Conventions, a set of rules for warfare intended to keep such atrocities from ever happening again. On June 13, 2412, the Hegemony and all other nations signed the Ares Conventions, agreeing to limit their use of nuclear weapons and cease assaulting civilian targets. Though hailed as an act of peace, the Ares Conventions in effect made war legal. Many of the signatory states wasted little time in abusing their legal right to wage warfare. The Star League era. The Hegemony engaged in its share of battles over the next century or so, but equally as often served as neutral mediator between warring parties. Despite the Hegemony's history of military expansion, the presence of terror at its heart gave it a certain credibility as a peacemaker in the eyes of other nations. Ian Cameron, who became Director General in 2549, expanded the Hegemony's peacemaking role and negotiated an end to a number of conflicts. In 2556, Ian persuaded the leaders of the Free Worlds League and the Capellan Confederation to sign the Treaty of Geneva. This famous document laid the groundwork for the formation of the Star League, the glorious interstellar alliance that all too briefly ended wars and advanced the welfare of all humanity. The Lyran Commonwealth signed the treaty in 2558, the Federated Sons in 2567. With the inclusion of the Draconis Combine in 2569, Ian Cameron achieved his dream of uniting virtually all of humanity under a single ruler. Led by the enlightened Cameron dynasty, the Star League gave its citizens peace and prosperity for 200 years. Though even the Star League couldn't completely wipe out the human need for conflict, it kept disputes between its member states under firm control. After Lord Simon Cameron's tragic death in 2751, the rulers of all the member states served as regents for Simon's young son, Richard Cameron, but unfortunately abused their positions to jockey for personal power. The lonely Richard turned to Stephen Amaris, ruler of the Rimworld's Republic in the far-off periphery, for friendship and advice. Amaris hated the Camerons and used his false friendship with Richard to destroy the League from within. On the 27th of December 2766, Stephen Amaris murdered Richard and took control of the Star League. Within weeks of his coup d'etat, Amaris tried and failed to gain the support of General Alexander Kerensky, commander of the Star League Defense Forces. The Honourable Kerensky despised the usurper Amaris and launched a bitter 13-year war to liberate the Hegemony from his grasp. On the 29th of September 2779, Kerensky led the assault against Amaris' final stronghold on Terra. In the face of overwhelming force, Amaris surrendered, and by order of General Kerensky, he and his family and his closest aides were summarily executed by SLDF troops for their crimes against humanity. This act of vengeance would close the book on the Star League. In late 2780, the Council Lords stripped General Kerensky of his title as Protector of the Realm and ordered him to disperse all SLDF units to their peacetime locations. Bereft of central leadership, the member states of the League vied with each other for power. Unable to agree on which of them should become the new First Lord of the League, the Lords officially dissolved the High Council in August of 2781. Each Lord then left Terra for home and began to build their own power base. When the various Lords attempted to persuade SLDF units to back their personal bid for power, Kerensky took drastic action. On the 14th of February 2784, Kerensky proposed to his troops that the SLDF should leave the Inner Sphere and found a new society beyond space, basing that society on the dearly held ideals of the League. In late November of 2784, Kerensky's Operation Exodus became a reality. More than 80% of the SLDF departed with him. The bewildered people of the Inner Sphere, mourning the loss of their hero, comforted themselves with the belief that Kerensky and his people would return when humanity needed them. Centuries of war. In the resulting power vacuum, the rulers of the realms now called the successor states fought endless, brutal wars, each seeking to re-establish the Star League under his own leadership. In 300 years of conflict, the successor lords accomplished little save to blast humankind virtually back to the Stone Age. By the time the third of the so-called succession wars ended, humanity had lost nearly every technological advance that the Star League had made possible. Only stringent restrictions on destroying jump ships, dropships, battle mechs and other irreplaceable technologies of war allowed interstellar combat to continue. As the successor states battered one another senseless, the fighting ground down to endless border skirmishes in which no combatant gained significant advantage. As the Inner Sphere warred, so did the descendants of the SLDF. Within 2 decades of planetfall, the men and women who had followed Kerensky in order to preserve the ideals of the League had betrayed those ideals and degenerated into vicious, fratricidal conflict. Determined to salvage something from the wreckage of his father's dream, Kerensky's son Nicholas led 800 loyal followers to a safe haven, where together they forged the society later known to history as the Clans. Though the clans wouldn't arrive in force in the Inner Sphere until 3049, they did send one unit as a vanguard in 3005, Wolf's Dragoons. This famed mercenary unit fought for each of the successor states in turn, testing the strength of their militaries. Ultimately, the clan-born Dragoons would become one of the strongest units fighting against the clans on the side of the Inner Sphere. Steps toward peace. By the turn of the 31st century, common wisdom among the successor state militaries held that conquest of the Inner Sphere through conventional means was impossible. Those who wished to found a second Star League had to find another way. In 3020, Archon Katrina Steiner of the Lyran Commonwealth sent a peace proposal to her fellow successor lords, but only Prince Hansa Davian of the Federated Sons showed any interest. In 3022, the Archon and the Prince concluded a secret alliance that would bind their realms together, through Hansa Davian's marriage to Katrina's daughter and heir, Melissa Steiner. This union joined 2 families and 2 nations into a single strong realm, combining the prosperous Lyran Commonwealth with the militarily powerful Federated Sons. The union of these states put the Draconis Combine in an uncomfortable position between 2 of its greatest enemies, and led the smaller Capellan Confederation and Free Worlds League to fear conquest by the emerging Federated Commonwealth. After months of secret negotiation between the Capellan Confederation, Draconis Combine and Free Worlds League, all 3 of these nations signed the Concord of Capteen in 3024. Intended as a counter to the Lyran Commonwealth Federated Sons alignment, this triple alliance provided mutual support and defence. It also guaranteed that any renewed war would engulf the entire Inner Sphere. The Fourth Succession War. On the 20th of August 3028, Hansa Davian and Melissa Steiner held their wedding on Terra in the presence of their fellow successor lords. At the reception, following the wedding, Hansa Davian offered a gift to his bride. As he fed Melissa a piece of wedding cake, Prince Hansa announced, "Wife, in honour of our marriage, in addition to this morsel I give you a vast prize. My love, I give you the Capellan Confederation." With those words, Hansa Davian launched the Fourth Succession War. In a series of military exercises held between 3026 and 3028, Hansa Davian had discovered that he could move vast numbers of his troops swiftly to distant battlefields. He'd also reorganised his army, regrouping battalions and regiments into regimental combat teams, consisting of one or more regiments of battle mechs plus armour, infantry and artillery. This organisation gave Davian troops overwhelming advantages in numbers. The RCTs poured into the Capellan Confederation in 7 successive waves, cutting it in half. Such large-scale mobilisation by the Federated Sons didn't come without cost. The vast demand for jump ships and drop ships to ferry troops across space reduced commerce between worlds to essential items only, inflicting economic hardship on many worlds. In addition, the Holy Order of ComStar, whose members had preserved the technology of interstellar communications ever since the fall of the League, opposed Hansa Davian's war and placed the Federated Sons under interdiction. ComStar's hyperpulse generators would relay no messages to, from, or between any Federated Sons world. Hampered by the interdiction, and pleased with his conquests, Hansa Davian sued for peace in 3029. The battered Capellan Confederation agreed willingly to the Federated Sons' terms, desperate to free its scant military resources for use against other enemies. The Free Worlds League had exploited the Confederation's weakened state, taking more than a few worlds for itself. The Confederation's leader could no longer afford war with House Davian if they hoped to preserve their nation. Skirmishes and plots. Between 3029 and 3039, the successor states jockeyed for power through covert dealings and small skirmishes in lieu of outright war. The Federated Commonwealth completed the integration of its militaries, governments, economies, and conquered worlds, forming the largest and most powerful realm in the Inner Sphere. Meanwhile, the Draconis Combine took one lesson from the Fourth Succession War to heart, and overhauled its military in response to Hansa Davian's Lightning War. In his role as the Combine's Gunji no Kanrei, or Deputy of Military Affairs, Theodore Kurita took several steps to ensure his nation's safety. He revamped the Draconis Combine mustered soldiery, upgrading their training and loosening the command structure to reward personal initiative. In his most controversial act, Theodore signed a compact with ComStar, granting independence to several Combine worlds in exchange for ComStar's Star League-era battlemechs. As a result, on the 13th of March 3034, the Free Rasalhague Republic announced its independence from the Draconis Combine. The Declaration of Independence touched off a minor rebellion within the Combine, as reactionary commanders refused to pull their military units from the New Republic. Theodore declared them Ronin, lordless, and sent his own units to drive them from Free Rasalhague space. Theodore's troops and various mercenary groups joined the Republic's Kung's army in battle against the Ronin, but poor contracts negotiated in haste with the mercenaries paid too much money for too little fighting. Free Rasalhague won their freedom that they claimed, but its citizens learned to loathe the mercenary. In April of 3039, Hansa Davian set in motion the second great wave of his war to unite the Inner Sphere. Selecting the Draconis Combine as his target, he launched a two-front attack on the Diran district. The first assault wave succeeded brilliantly. Davian's military advisors believed that they'd taken the Combine by complete surprise. Before Federated Commonwealth forces could launch their second wave, however, the Combine counterattacked and threw the Commonwealth on the defensive. Aided by the Star League mechs he'd received from ComStar, Theodore Kurita gambled with the fate of his nation and won. By attacking in the teeth of the Davian onslaught, Theodore made Hansa Davian believe the DCMS was stronger than it actually was. Also, Hansa Davian saw no reason to grind his troops down against soldiers armed with superior Star League-era technology. By October of 3039, Davian chose to cut their losses and make peace. The War of 3039 accomplished little for those who fought it, save to remind the successor states of the severe cost. A few worlds changed hands, but the balance of power remained the same. Aside from an assault in 3041 in which the 10th Lyran Guards took the world of Skondia from the Combine, the states of the Inner Sphere seemed content to rebuild their realms in peace. Military readiness and overcharged rhetoric still ruled the day, but the successor states had, at least temporarily, grown tired of war. The Inner Sphere rebuilt during these 10 years of peace, which ended abruptly on August 13th, 3049. Enemies from beyond. In that year, While hunting pirates in the periphery near the Free Rasalhague Republic, a detachment of the famed Kellhound's mercenary unit met and succumbed to a mysterious fighting force on a godforsaken planet known as the Rock. Casualties included Phelan Kell, only son of the Hound's founder Morgan Kell and cousin to Victor Steiner Davian, Hansa and Melissa's eldest son. Phelan was listed as missing, presumed killed, but the Inner Sphere didn't learn his true fate until several months later. The Kellhound's defeat marked the first of many battles lost to the clans, mighty warriors descended from the long-vanished Star League army. The clans invaded the Inner Sphere in order to conquer it and restore their version of the Star League. In March of 3050, the clans struck in force, hammering the Draconis Combine, the Free Rasalhague Republic, and the Lyran side of the Federated Commonwealth. Wave after wave of clan attacks followed, executed with blinding speed and ruthless efficiency. Using their technologically superior Omnimex and tenacious armoured infantry known as Elementals, clan warriors cut down their Inner Sphere opponents like wheat before a scythe. 4 clans rolled across the Inner Sphere in the first wave: clans Smoke Jaguar, Ghost Bear, Jade Falcon, and Wolf. All took their share of planets, but Clan Wolf conquered more worlds than any of its compatriots. Inner Sphere forces launched a few successful counterattacks, but those strikes came too little and too late. The clan Juggernaut thundered on, halted only when catastrophe struck. On the 31st of October 3050, a Rasalhagian pilot named Tira Miraborg crashed her Shylone fighter into the clan flagship Direwolf, killing the clan's war leader. The death of the Ill Khan accomplished what 6 months of desperate fighting had not. The clans ended their assaults, garrisoned the worlds they'd conquered, and pulled much of their military strength out of the Inner Sphere. For several months, later dubbed the Year of Peace, the leaders of each clan debated the question of who should be the new Ill Khan. In mid-3051, they chose Khan Ulrich Kerensky of Clan Wolf to lead a renewed assault against the Inner Sphere. In this Year of Peace, Colonel Jamie Wolf of Wolf's Dragoons summoned the leaders of the successor states to stand on the world of Outreach. There, Wolf revealed that he and his fellow Dragoons were actually clan warriors, and that they were prepared to aid the Inner Sphere against their own people. The Inner Sphere leaders spent the better part of that year formulating a combined response to the overwhelming clan threat. Setting aside centuries' worth of mistrust between their two nations, Hansa Davian and Theodore Kurita sealed a non-aggression pact. Davian also exported material aid from the Free Worlds League by promising its leader, Thomas Marek, that he would devote all resources of the new Avalon Institute of Science toward curing Thomas's son, Joshua, of leukemia. In November of 3051, the clans renewed their invasion of the Inner Sphere. In January 3052, Clan Smoke Jaguar and Nova Cat attacked the combined world of Luthien. In an unexpected political courage that sealed the loose alliance between the Federated Commonwealth and the Draconis Combine, Hansa Davian sent the Kellhounds and Wolf's Dragoons to help defend his age-old enemy's homeworld. The trust engendered between the two nations by Davian's action enabled both to devote all of their efforts to fighting the clans. Despite the close cooperation between the Federated Commonwealth and the Draconis Combine, the Inner Sphere's unity remained largely an illusion. ComStar had negotiated with the clans soon after the initial invasion, and upon their return to the Inner Sphere, the Order offered to administrate the clans' conquered worlds. ComStar's leader, Primus Mindo Waterley, intended to use the clan conquest to bring about the collapse of civilization. ComStar would then step in as humanity's saviour, thus gaining power over all human-occupied space. When Waterley discovered that the clans intended to conquer Terra, ComStar's homeworld and cradle of humanity, she abruptly changed her tactics. At the urging of her precentor Marshal Anastasius Vogt, Waterley struck a deal with the invaders and sent the Comguards to fight the clans on the backwater world of Tukiad. If the clans won, ComStar would give them Terra. If they lost, the clans would halt their advance toward Terra for 15 years. Unknown to the precentor Marshal, Waterley also set secret plans in motion to strike at the clans and the Inner Sphere simultaneously. The Comguards would defeat the clans on Tukiad in May of 3052, in a horrific bloodbath that cost ComStar's forces dearly. While the Comguards fought and died on Tukiad to save the Inner Sphere, Primus Waterley gave word to her agents. They launched Operation Scorpion, making a series of covert attacks on worlds in the clan occupation zones and striking at communication sites across the Inner Sphere. With this bold gambit, she hoped to cripple both the Inner Sphere and the clans in the same blow, enabling her ComStar loyalists to seize power. The strikes failed. Upon Fox's return to Terra, he deposed Primus Waterly and began a massive reform of ComStar. Victory and change. The end of the clan invasion brought other changes in its wake. Hansa Davian died of a massive heart attack at the end of the war. Chancellor Romano Lau of the Capellan Confederation died at the hands of an assassin, leaving her son Sun Tzu on the celestial throne. Sun Tzu immediately began to build a power base, allying himself to House Marek through an engagement to Thomas Marek's illegitimate daughter Isis. Within a few short years, Theodore Kurita succeeded his father Takashi as coordinator of the Draconis Combine. Ryan Steiner, perennial thorn in the side of the Federated Commonwealth rulers, began agitating for an independent Isle of Skye. ComStar, meanwhile, split into two factions over Presenter Fox reforms. The reactionary group, calling itself Word of Blake, emigrated to the Free Worlds League and their planet of Gibson, with Thomas Marek's blessing. On the 19th of June 3055, a bomb blast at a charity event on Tharkad killed the Federated Commonwealth's beloved Archon, Melissa Steiner. The authorities failed to apprehend a suspect, and Ryan Steiner, riding the crest of anti-Davian sentiment that he'd spent years creating, accused Archon Prince Victor Steiner Davian of engineering Melissa's death in order to ascend her throne. Ryan's native Isle of Skye, already seething with secessionist fever, erupted in open rebellion. Victor's sister Katrina, who took her grandmother's name for political reasons, tried to mediate between her brother and the rebel faction, with little success. In April of 3056, Victor's aide and Katrina's lover, Galen Cox, fell victim to a bombing attack in a Solaris hotel that narrowly missed Katrina. 4 days later, an unknown assassin would shoot Ryan Steiner dead. Suspicion centered on Ryan's aide, but many people suspected that Victor had ordered his death to silence allegations about the death of the Archon. In an effort to defuse the hostilities in the Lyran half of the Federated Commonwealth, Victor declared the Lyran world of Tharkad and the Davian world of New Avalon co-capital. He then shifted his government to New Avalon and left Tharkad in Katrina's hands, naming his sister as his official regent. This move, coupled with Ryan's death, quelled the rebellion, but the brief peace could not last. Victor arrived on New Avalon only to be faced with disturbing news that Joshua Marek was dying of leukemia despite the best efforts of the NAIS to save him. Knowing that his realm still desperately needed war materiel that only the Free Worlds League could provide, Victor couldn't afford to lose the only hold he had over the Captain General Thomas Marek. Victor would then replace the dying child with a substitute. Marek, however, had his suspicions, and soon learned that the Joshua Marek on New Avalon was not his son, but a duplicate. To retaliate for the death of his son, Marek sent troops into the Commonwealth's Sarna March. A horrified Katrina publicly denounced Victor for his deception, recalled all Lyran troops to her half of the Federated Commonwealth, severed relations with her brother's realm, and announced the formation of a neutral Lyran alliance. In conjunction with Marek's invasion, Sun Tzu Lao sent Capellan troops into the Sarna March to reconquer worlds that his grandfather had lost during the Fourth Succession War. Aided by Katrina's neutrality and united by their hatred for Davian, Marek and Lao prosecuted their war against the Commonwealth with surprising speed and success. As the threat of a wider war between the nations of the Inner Sphere loomed, political infighting between the clans would intensify. The clans had long been divided into two camps: the Crusaders, who sought to restore the Star League to the Inner Sphere through conquest, and the Wardens, who believed their responsibility lay in safeguarding the Inner Sphere until the Great Houses re-established the Star League on their own. Many of the clans, especially Jade Falcon, chafed beneath the truce that Ilkhan Kerensky had signed and willingly seized any excuse to break it. Opposition to the Truce of Tukey had soon erupted into a clan-style civil war between Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf, known as the Refusal War. Led by Phelan Kell, who had risen amongst his clan captors to become Khan Phelan, ward of Clan Wolf, a significant portion of Clan Wolf's warriors fled to the safe haven of the Kellhound's homeworld of Ark Royal. The rest of Clan Wolf fought a losing battle against the Jade Falcons. Both conflicts ended suddenly and swiftly in a surprising series of twists. Having taken back from Victor Davian the worlds that had once belonged to the Free Worlds League, Thomas Marek concluded a peace treaty with the Archon Prince. Sun Tzu Lao, unwilling to continue his own campaign in the absence of Marik's backing, grudgingly agreed to also end hostilities. The Kellhounds, having refused Katrina's demand for aid in defending the Lyran Alliance against Capellan aggression, established an anti-clan defence zone centred on Ark Royal. By this act, the mercenary unit carved its own fiefdom out of Katrina's realm. In the oddest turn of events, however, the Wolves, who had battled the Jade Falcons, were absorbed by that clan, and then won freedom from their Jade Falcon conquerors, led by Khan Vladimir Ward. The universe turned upside down. The first 5 years after Tukiyid, tumultuous though they were, seemed positively tranquil compared to the explosive events of 3058 to 3061. Those years saw many of the certainties by which clan and Innisphere alike had lived violently overturned, giving way to a new order fraught with possibility and peril. In the wake of the Sana March invasion, the Word of Blake seized its chance to capture Terra, the cradle of humanity, and ComStar's stronghold. Troop movements from the Free Worlds League into the so-called Chaos March provided cover for the Word of Blake militia to move several divisions within striking distance of humanity's homeworld, and the high demand for mercenary troops in the region of space did the rest. Brian's Legion, a mercenary unit that had constituted nearly half of the strength of ComStar's Terran Defence Force since the Fourth Succession War, abruptly ended its ComStar contract in favour of a higher-paying Chaos March assignment. Unwilling to relocate Comguard forces from the clan border, ComStar's Presenter Marshal chose to replace Brian's Legion with another mercenary unit, the 21st Centauri Lancers. The Lancers, however, never arrived on Terra. Instead, the Word of Blake sent its own troops, which masqueraded as the Lancers for long enough to move the rest of their forces into position. In late February of 3058, the Word of Blake struck from the inside as well as on the battlefield. The Comguards on Terra, taken by surprise and unable to use the planet's formidable defences because of Blake's sabotage, fought a bloody but ultimately losing battle across every Terran continent. By early March of 3058, the Word of Blake held Terra in an iron grip from which it is yet to be dislodged. Presenter Marshal Vogt of ComStar declined to attempt the reconquest of Terra as long as the clans remained a greater threat to the Inner Sphere. During those same months, Clan Jade Falcon drove deep into the Lyran Alliance and captured several planets, until Inner Sphere forces could stop their advance on the world of Coventry. Conceived as a show of strength in the aftermath of the Refusal War, the Coventry campaign was to have far more ominous consequences for the clans than the Falcon commanders could have anticipated. On Coventry, the Falcons were deprived of victory by two events: strikes by Khan Vlad Ward's Wolves at worlds in the Jade Falcon occupation zone, and the arrival of a coalition force from across the Inner Sphere, led by Victor Steiner Davian of the Federated Commonwealth. The Inner Sphere and Jade Falcon armies were evenly matched. Neither side could win Coventry without a protracted and bloody battle, and both commanders realised it. Prince Victor invoked the clan right of Safcon to ensure a safe landing for his troops, and then offered Falcon Khan Martha Pride the only honourable way out: Hegira, the traditional right of a defeated enemy to leave the field of his forces and honour intact. Under other circumstances, Pride may have refused, but with the Wolf Khan making clear his intent to attack her clan's holdings, she could not afford to leave those worlds undefended by mere garrison troops. She accepted Hegira, and the Jade Falcons left Coventry without another shot being fired. The Star League Reborn. In October of 3058, the leaders of the various Inner Sphere powers gathered on the Lyran capital of Tharkad to accomplish peacefully what they'd failed to achieve during centuries of war: the rebirth of the Star League. Despite deep divisions that remained amongst them, fueled by the legions of dead soldiers and civilians from all sides, the rulers of the Inner Sphere agreed to join together for one single purpose: to end the clan threat once and for all. To prove themselves a force to be reckoned with, the new Star League chose to destroy a single clan: the Smoke Jaguars. Initially, the Star League intended only to drive them out of their occupation zone. However, information from a clan traitor enabled them to strike at Clan Smoke Jaguar's homeworld as well. In 3059 and 3060, Clan Smoke Jaguar died at the hands of the combined armies of the Inner Sphere. Their occupation zone overrun, their homeworld in ruins, and their warrior caste decimated, the Jaguars essentially ceased to exist. The Inner Sphere force then turned attention toward the rest of the clans. Lacking the might to defeat the entire clan military, Prince Victor Steiner Davian led his forces to Strana Meshti, the heart of clan space and clan culture. There they defeated the Crusader clans in a hard-fought trial of refusal. The Crusaders' defeat ended the invasion in a way none of its proponents could have envisioned. Far from taking Terra and rebuilding the League and the clan's image, the Crusader clans found themselves locked into their Inner Sphere occupation zones, or driven from the Inner Sphere entirely. Clan Novacat, which had sided with the Inner Sphere in obedience to the mystic visions of its leaders, was given its own fiefdom in the Draconis Combine. For what their fellow clans termed treason, the Novacats were abjured, and their holdings in clan space found forfeit. Clan Ghostbear, which chose not to fight in the trial for a cause it no longer believed in, also became a permanent presence in the Inner Sphere, claiming the majority of the Free Razelhag Republic as their dominion. Clan Steel Viper suffered the most humiliating defeat of all the invading clans. Next to the Shattered Smoke Jaguars, thinking to take advantage of Jade Falcon's weakness in the aftermath of the Refusal War, the Vipers challenged Falcon dominance of the two clans' shared occupation zones. They failed, and left the Inner Sphere rather than being destroyed by their Falcon antagonists. As the man who ended the most fearsome threat the Inner Sphere had ever known, Victor Steiner Davian should have been the hero of the hour. In the eyes of many he was, but his own people were not among them. The prince had left his youngest sister Yvonne Steiner Davian as regent on New Avalon in his absence. He returned to an Inner Sphere to find Yvonne deposed, and the Federated Commonwealth in the hands of the deceitful and ambitious Katrina Steiner Davian, herself looking to become the next First Lord of the League. Even without a realm, however, Prince Victor remained a political force to be reckoned with. At the second Star League conference, Presenter Marshal Anastasius Vogt of ComStar announced his retirement and named Victor as his successor. The new Presenter Marshal used his position to vote Coordinator Theodore Kurita into the post of First Lord. Power plays. Despite their best attempts, the lords of the great houses could not put aside their most basic of instincts. Using his position as First Lord to validate his actions, Sun Tzu Lao launched a war of aggression aimed at reclaiming the St. Ives Compact, the nation that his aunt had split from in the Capellan Confederation following the Fourth Succession War. Before the Second Star League Conference even took place, Sun Tzu had involved troops from every nation in the Inner Sphere in support of his own goals. When First Lord Kurita ended Star League support for his war, Sun Tzu drafted two periphery realms, the Magistracy of Canopus and the Taurian Concordat, into a Trinity alliance that allowed him to swallow his aunt's realm whole in June of 3063. In exchange for the blood of their young men and women, the leaders of the two periphery nations gained precious recognition within the League and access to technologies that the successor states had long held secret. At the same time, the presence of the Novacats and the stresses of reabsorbing Jaguar-held worlds in the Combine had breathed new life into moribund reactionary movements opposed to the Coordinator and his liberalization of Combine society. Emboldened by their Coordinator's apparent lack of vision and the resurgence of traditionalism within the Combine, the so-called Black Dragon Society sponsored a number of audacious moves designed to force their leader's hand. A raid on the Lyran world of Sky ignited the fury of the late Rhinesteiner's people, who retaliated by attacking Combine troops in the Lion's Thumb, a region belonging to the Lyran Alliance but garrisoned by Combine troops under the banner of the League Peacekeepers. In response, Theodore Kurita annexed the worlds in August of 3062, punishing the Lyrans and playing right into the hands of the Black Dragons. The Black Dragons then took the next step, but went too far. Under their command, the 4 regiments of the Combine's Alshane Avengers went rogue in October of 3062 and attacked their former homeworld deep within the Ghostbear Dominion. Unfortunately, Alshane was also the clan's adopted capital. Instead of rallying the shouts of the Combine's people behind their master's causes, the Avengers only awakened the sleeping bear. Aroused, the bears crushed the Avengers in a single sweep of their claws and began their own punitive war against the Combine, one that lasted for more than a year, bringing war to dozens of worlds and killing countless young warriors on both sides. As befitting the two warrior cultures, however, the war ended in December of 3063 with an honour duel, one that the Combine would lose. Civil War. While the Bears punished the Draconis Combine, Khan Vlad Ward convinced Hellhorse's Khan Malavai Fletcher to take advantage of their long-time ally. Determined to carve a fiefdom of his own from the Ghostbear Dominion, and in doing so secure for himself greater prestige amongst Kerensky's children, Fletcher embarked on his own campaign against the Ghostbears. Fletcher did not succeed, however. Instead of taking worlds from the Dominion, the Bears forced them from the 3 worlds that Khan Ward had given them and sent them running back to clan space, disgraced. By and far, though, the events of the decade were overshadowed by the disintegration of Katrina Steiner-Davian's grasp over the nations she'd stolen from her brother. While the former Archon Prince had at his command the military might of ComStar, he refused to inflict the pain and suffering of a long and bloody civil war upon his own people, even as evidence of his sister's involvement in the murder of their mother would mount. Fate, as it turned out, would make this decision for him. For every day that Katrina remained on the throne of New Avalon, she lost just a little bit more of her grip over the people of both the Federated Commonwealth and her own Lyran Alliance. Her heavy-handed measures to keep order only caused more resentment for her rule amongst the common people, while her military commanders became more and more divided in their loyalties. In August of 3062, tempers briefly flared on Solaris 7 when a scheduled bout between two favoured mech warrior champions, one of Lyran heritage and the other of the Federated Sons, turned into a massive riot between fans and other mech warriors on both sides. Though optimists had hoped for the best when a ceasefire calmed the fighting on the planet, it was only a matter of time before tempers between the two who supported Katrina and those who opposed her rule flared. The inevitable finally came in on November when fighting broke out in the Federated Commonwealth's Capellan March. This time there was no ceasefire, no going back. It wasn't until Arthur Steiner-Davian, the youngest brother of Victor and Katrina, was killed in a bomb blast, though, that Victor Steiner-Davian finally succumbed to fate. On the 8th of December 3062, he officially accused his sister of complicity in the murder of their own mother, and called upon the people of the Federated Commonwealth and the Lyran Alliance to rise up and topple her dictatorial regime. What followed was 5 years of the bloodiest fighting the Innisphere had seen since General Kerensky led the Star League armies against Stefan Amaris. From the Corwood reaches of the Lyran Alliance, where he had been inspecting his ComStar troops, Victor organised an army of patriots to oust the tyrannical regime his sister had forged in both nations. Soldiers and citizens from not only the Lyran Alliance and the Federated Commonwealth, but from the entire Innisphere, flocked to his side. War erupted in all regions of the two nations as Victor fought his way down the length of the Lyran Alliance and into the Federated Commonwealth with his newly christened armed forces of the Federated Sons. Though suffering defeats and personal hardships, including the assassination of his lover, Omi Kirita, on orders from Katrina, Victor would finally make his way to New Avalon in November of 3066. Spending the next 5 months fighting the last vestiges of his sister's loyalists, at the same time Morgan Kell and Khan Phelan Kell landed on Tharkad with Peter Steiner-Davian to face the Katrina loyalists under the command of Nondi Steiner, the sister of Victor and Katrina's maternal grandmother. Pain and healing. The armies arrayed behind the former Archon Prince carried the day and removed Katrina from power, but only at a horrible price. Countless millions had died during the carnage of the previous 5 years, and the armies of the Lyran Alliance and the rechristened Federated Sons were a mere shadow of what they once were. For his part, Victor Steiner-Davian did not assume the throne he'd fought so long and hard to remove his sister from. Acquiescing to fate, he instead handed the reins of leadership to his two remaining siblings, Yvonne, on New Avalon, and Peter, on Tharkad. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the two leaders now have their work cut out for them. Not only do they need to urge their people to move onward, but they must also contend with the aftermath of invasions into other nations. The Jade Falcons with their campaign in 3064 to 3065 against the Alliance, the renewed Sky Rebellion of 3065 to 3066, the Combine attacks into the Federated Sons in 3065 to 3066, and finally, the presence of Capellan troops on Sons worlds. Only with the help of regional lords like Dukes George Hassock and Robert Kelsworth Steiner will they be able to hold their realms together. The nations of the former Federated Commonwealth were certainly not the only ones to suffer during this period. Coordinator Theodore Kurita lost not only his daughter Omi, but also his wife, Tomo. And while war racked his two closest neighbours, the elevation of his final son Minoru to the post of Clan Novacat Lawmaster can bring him some comfort. The dragon is not the man he used to be, and his subordinates have been forced to compensate. After all of his victories in the past decade, Sun Tzu Lao was now coming to realise just how precarious a position he and his nation are in. Having expelled Isis Marek from the Confederation, Lao has lost the support and friendship of Thomas Marek and his Free Worlds League in a time when strong alliances may be the only thing to prevent utter annihilation. Even Marek's nation may be in dire straits. With the word of Blake's recent militarization drive, the Peaceful League may explode into war any minute. The Star League Conference again approaches in this time of unease and unrest. Only time will tell whether the new First Lord will be able to once and for all put aside personal interest and settle the differences between the nations of the Inner Sphere. For now, the Inner Sphere is poised precariously between peace and war. At any moment, the balance of power may shift, setting battle mechs on march, and worlds ablaze. And that's it. Thanks for listening to that one, everyone. It's a much longer video. It's kind of a lore warrior, but it's also kind of a primer, which came from the book Battletech Inner Sphere at a Glance. It was available from Catalyst in one of their prior core set releases. It's a very interesting little book. As I said, that was literally verbatim the introduction to the Inner Sphere. After that, the book goes on, tells you a bit about the different great houses, which I've done videos on previously. But there are information here about mercenaries and some of the other powers. It doesn't go into a huge amount of detail, such as minor periphery states. It does have things about, you know, the mech warrior, the battle mechs, how their armor and weapons are supposed to work, the mechanics of an assault, for instance, how jump ships, jump points work, pirate jump points, detecting them, and then the different mission types that you could play in the tabletop game. And then it has some basic information with regards to the mechs that came in the base box at that time, obviously omitting a lot of the unseens, if not all of them. And yeah, it was a pretty cool book. So, as I said, this one wasn't a lore warrior. It's taken me a bit longer to put this together because I wanted to get as many different kind of images as possible. But it was something that's been requested, as I said in the intro, numerous times if I'd ever do a kind of introduction to the Inner Sphere thing for people who may not know a lot about the history, might know, obviously they've played some of the computer games, but the computer games always have an unfortunate habit of not really explaining things, having that information just kind of tucked away in a section for people to read when they're not really playing the game as often, or they just want to learn more. So that's that. It's something that I'm quite happy with, and it definitely opens the door for me to do something that I've been sort of tinkering around with a long time in my head, is doing campaigns and going through some of the major campaigns that occurred. And the first one I wanted to really look at was Operation Klondike, which was the sort of the first great invasion by the clans when they first emerged. So they weren't fully developed, let's say, as the clans that invaded. This was just after they'd first been formed. They literally had dozens of mech warriors available rather than entire armies, which they have later on. And it's an interesting back and forth. It has a fair amount of the history about what happened to the Exodus fleet and the original worlds that they colonized, and then the rise of power of Nicholas Kerensky and all of that kind of stuff. And I want to kind of cover the campaign part where they jumped in. So it's something that's going to hopefully come about within the next couple of months if I can work my arse around to doing it. Other than that, I'd have also liked to do more of the short stories, because thank you very much to Tigger, who is in Tor, managed to grab me all of the Battle Technology magazines, which is where I've grabbed previous short stories from. And it's a real shame that these things haven't really been reprinted or made available again, because they are very good. Also, a lot of original mechs came out of the Battle Technology magazines, things like the Pillager, for instance, or the Osprey, mechs that you may have seen in later technical readouts, or they've since been changed a little bit. The Battle Axe, for instance, which I did a lore warrior of, was originally written up in the Battle Technology magazine, and it was adapted later on, physically changed as well. And the write-up for the original Battle Axe, for instance, in the magazine, suggested that it was kind of a poor man's alternative to the Warhammer, rather than being a sort of preceding mech that the Warhammer sort of took inspiration from. So there's a few little bits and pieces like that. Anyway, this is an outro that's gone on long enough. Thank you everyone who's listening. Thank you everybody who has followed all this time with all the Lore Warrior stuff. And I have no intention of slowing down. Sometimes I feel bad when I can't get a Lore Warrior out at least one a week. You know, it's just sometimes it's just the energy to do it, or just having the drive to do it, because I don't want to record something that's got too many mistakes, or it's just subpar. But yeah, I wanted to do a bit more with this one. So as I said, yeah, thanks for watching. I guess it's mostly images. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.